your event is starting. I'm live, apparently, but it also says that my event is still starting, so I don't really know, but I just start doing stuff. So, yeah, as you may have already noticed, this is a panel called Do You Want to Make a Vidshow? I'm going to do a fairly quick PowerPoint at the beginning for just kind of running through the basics of what you need to do to make a vidshow for VidCon. And then we'll have like a chat portion where hopefully other people will also say stuff. So if there are, I know that there are a lot of other VJs in the room, so I want to kind of get everybody's ideas and everybody can tell me what stuff I've said wrong, and also people who haven't made a vidshow but like enjoy watching vidshows. It would be good to kind of have some chat about what people enjoy and what works for you as a viewer and that kind of thing. So first of all, I thought I would clear up some questions that people might have about making vidshows if they've never done one before. So question one, is making a vidshow scary? No, it's not scary. Yeah, it is super fun, it's not hard, and there is tons of help. Like, anybody in this room who has made a vidshow will probably help you if you get stuck making a vidshow. Second question, can't remember what it is. Do I have to do it all by myself? No, you don't have to do it by yourself. You can do it in a pair, you can do it in a group, you can do it solo and then be like, help, I didn't realize I would need some help with this, and then your friend can join you if you want to do that. You don't have to be like this sad, lonely guy who I found on a stock photo website. Question 3, does it take a long time? I would be lying if I said that it's super quick, but it's really fun and it doesn't take a really long time. Like, you have to kind of be prepared to put in a bit of a time commitment, but it's not the kind of thing where you'll spend months agonizing over it. I mean, some people might, I don't. I just kind of fling it together. But you probably won't spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on it. You'll just spend hours and hours. So possibly not as encouraging as I was intending to be. It doesn't take that long, it's fine. Next question. Do I need to be a vid expert to make a vid show? Nope, you really don't. As long as you kind of know what a vid is and you've seen some in your life and you have some kind of way of putting them in order, you've pretty much got everything you need. You don't need like a PhD in vidding or anything, although I know some people in this room have that. Next question. Next one. Is the technical side complicated? Not really. You pretty much, the VidCon website makes it all really straightforward. You just sort of fill in the details and upload stuff. It takes a little bit of time because you have to put stuff in the individual boxes, but if you sit down and do it, it doesn't take very long. Really, really easy to do. And I think we're coming up to the final and most important question, which is, what if I make a bad vid show and everybody thinks I'm the worst?
You end up doing the VidCon quiz.
I can honestly, I mean, people feel free to disagree with me, but I genuinely think that there is no such thing as a bad vid show. As long as you put some vids in an order, it's always going to be fun to watch, but there's just some stuff that you can do to make it super, super interesting and amazing to watch instead of just like, yeah, that was pretty good fun. So like, yeah, that was pretty good fun is probably like the lowest level you can ever achieve, even if you put in no effort whatsoever. So I can't remember what the next slide is. Let's see. Yeah, so these are the basic steps of making a vid show for VidCon. Step 1, choose what theme you're going to have. I'm going to go through these steps in more detail in a second. And also you've got to submit your idea on the site, but that takes like 2 minutes. You've got to find some vids, then you've got to somehow put them in an order that will be a normal vid show size and not like 2 or 3 hours, as is sometimes tempting. You've got to upload all of your playlists, like your metadata and all that kind of stuff, and then once you've done that, you upload the vids at a later time, usually, and then once that's all done, you pretty much just watch your vid show. Hopefully. I mean, if you're not actually at the con, if you're kind of watching remotely or if you're not able to attend, you can obviously watch it on the website, but it is really fun to be in the room when your vid show is playing, so I highly recommend it if you can. Okay, so step 1, choosing a theme. So you might want to go with a genre. I've put a couple up here. That's obviously a costume drama and a high school comedy. So you might want to kind of go into a bit more detail. Like you might want to do. I mean, you can't do a vampire show because you've already had one, but like that kind of thing. Big, like meaty questions make quite good vid shows. Types of relationships. We had a lovely femme/vid show, that kind of thing. You might want to do something to do with the style or the era of the vids, or something particular to do with like different techniques that people have used. You might want a certain emotion. Like I remember a few years ago, we ended the con with a squee vid show, which was a lot. Or you might have something that isn't covered by this at all, which is great because it means that it's something new and exciting. There are probably a few questions that you want to think about before you make your vid show. Are there enough vids? If you pick a really interesting and unusual theme, you really want to make sure that you've got at least a handful of vids to start with, because if not, you will be in trouble. Although you'll probably be fine. Has there already been a vid show with a similar theme in the last couple of years? I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker, but you might want to make sure that you've got like a slightly different angle, or that you don't use all the same vids. Is your vid show interesting to the general con audience? I would say we're quite a curious bunch, so if we don't know anything about the type of vids that you're putting in your vid show, that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but you may want to think about if it's something quite obscure, like ease people in somehow, or give some thought as to how you're going to present it. But I don't think any of these things are deal breakers, but they're just things to consider. So what's the next slide? Let's find out. Where do I find vids? You might have your you might have your own collection of vids. You might ask around, like hopefully if you go on sort of vidding communities on Dreamwidth or on Twitter and that kind of thing, people will have recommendations usually. Sometimes very enthusiastic recommendations where they will write you an essay and be like, you have to include this vid because these 12 reasons. But you don't. It's still not mandatory, even if they've written a really nice essay. Have a look at like Festivids is very good because there's all kinds of different shows and genres and all kinds of different focuses of vids. So you usually find at least a few things in there. AO3, people are starting to post vids on AO3 a bit more. So because they have like a really kind of good tagging system, if you're looking for something on a particular theme, that could be helpful. YouTube obviously is like full of stuff, but it's best to go in with kind of a rough idea of what you're looking for, otherwise, who knows? You can also ask for premieres if you want someone to make you a vid specifically for your show. So yeah, I really wanted to use this image in this slide, and I had to like Google like confused maths lady, but it worked. Lo and behold, yeah, this is probably it's not hard and scary, but it is the hard and scariest bit because it can be quite challenging, but it's also the funnest bit because it's the bit where you're really kind of creating something. So yeah, first of all, you want to cut your list of vids down. Next slide, please. So these are some of the questions that you might consider. So do you have a lot of vids that are saying basically the same thing? Have you used like all vids from that one show about the guy who does the thing? Or have you got some vids from like a different show about the team that does the different thing? Or whatever. Have you got the same vid or the same musician, the same fandom lots of times? You might want to mix it up a bit. Can you get hold of all the vids on the list? Are the videos okay with their vids being shown? It's not a huge chore to find that out, but it is worth dropping people a note and being like, I'm planning on putting this in my show, is that okay? Let me know if not, kind of thing. But you can just kind of copy paste that to the videos. Have any of the vids been in previous shows in VidUcon or any of the other kind of vid showy cons? Again, not a deal breaker, but you might want to keep an eye on it if you've kind of had something similar. You don't want to have too many vids that have been in other recent shows. So yeah, once you have got that down and you've got like a good sort of 45 to 50 minute list of vids, you can then think about what order you're going to put them in. You can have the next slide. Then lots of questions to consider. This is like really subjective, so I really want to get other people's opinions in a minute about how they actually do this bit. But the vid that you open with is quite important, obviously. you might want to try and get like a sort of arc or an argument building up or something that makes your vid show flow. Like obviously if it's like a squee vid show or something, your argument is basically just yay. But you might have a kind of a meatier subject that you want to kind of make certain points at certain bits of the show. If you've got vids that are for similar things, do you want to kind of put them together so they're like a little mini show of their own, or do you want to spread them out? And I always think that your last vid is really important as well, because that's the one that people are going to remember when they go out of the vid show. So it should be something pretty cool. What is the next slide? So once you've got all of that information in your own spreadsheet or however you want to organize it, it's really simple. You go to your vid shows on the VidCon site, assuming that like you've asked to do this vid show and obtained permission and whatever. And this is just all the bits of information you put in. It takes a little bit of time to put in, but it's really easy. You just save it, and then it's in there. And then at some point, you will then upload your vids, although that's usually like a couple of weeks later when everything's been finalized. So all the metadata that you put in before is there already. So you need to upload the vids, add warnings and string links and stuff like that. And I personally recommend using FTP because although it's a bit fiddly if you don't know how to use it, it's quite straightforward and ends up going quicker than uploading it in the browser. But you can also just use the VidCon site and upload each vid individually. It's just kind of personal preference. So like I mentioned before, watching your own vid show is quite an intense experience. So I've just got a slide that expresses that. I was having a lot of fun with the stock photo website. So yeah, it's a little bit nerve-wracking for me personally anyway, but it's also really rewarding because then when people are like, yay, what a great vid show, then you're right there in the room with everybody who's appreciating it, so that's really good fun. And yeah, some questions for everybody. For VJs, what have you learned? What was your best vid show? What is the most challenging part of making a vid show for you? What's some good advice to give people making vid shows? And is your process different from what I just described? Basically, is there anything in here that was complete nonsense and that you super disagree with? We can have a fight about it. Or like anything else that came up during this slideshow that you want to discuss or expand on for your own process. For people who like watching vid shows, what have your favorites been? What made them work for you? Any other kind of questions or ideas or thoughts you have about vid shows generally? If people don't want to talk out loud because like it's on the internet and stuff, there are some pens and paper there if anybody wants to write a note. You can pass it forward to Cleo here, who's a noble land mermaid who will read out your comments for you.
So I'm just going to have a mysterious voices and they will never identify us. What else just use my voice?
Okay, so yeah, what do people think? Anybody? Yes.
What if I now want to make a vid show called Challenge Accepted, the worst vid show in the universe?
I personally think that would be amazing. I suggest you do it. It would be incredible. We'll look forward to that next year.
I think it would have to be a double because we would need a panel afterwards entitled Define Worst.
Can we do that next year? That actually sounds really fun. Anybody else? Yes.
That actually connects very well to mine. I was wondering about the etiquette of, I still don't quite understand the etiquette of asking bidders if you can include their bid in your vid show. And I thought, if your vid show was
That's true.
That is a tricky area. What I normally do in terms of asking people permission is because often like videos aren't online anymore or they're busy. What I normally do is I drop them a little note saying, I'm planning on putting this in my show. Let me know if that's not okay with you. And then I've never actually had anybody say, no, that's terrible.
I have once.
Really?
Yeah. But I do the same as you. I let them know, and then if it's publicly available and they don't get back to me.
Yeah, like if it's passworded or if it's kind of like only on their site, then I would probably ask permission properly. But if it's on YouTube or somewhere, like we could be YouTubing in here anyway, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I said a message to someone on YouTube because I wanted to use a heroes vid for my superhero show I did a couple of years ago. It's a really nice hero and Nando video, you know, in buddies, fighting crime. And I sent a message and they were like, no, please don't do it. And then they locked the video. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
I guess this is where it is good to ask because sometimes people do have their reasons for that kind of thing. But generally, I find that...
I felt really bad, but all I did was ask.
Yes.
I didn't use it, so.
Yeah.
For the vampires Vidshow, I had one of the bidders get back to me and ask me, say, like, you can if you want to use that one, but I've made better ones.
I've been the bidder in that situation.
But to be here in this case, I just didn't have any other hits with black women in them. And so to try and do something, we're saying, like, if they're all vids about that show with that one guy, to try and mix things up, I felt I had to take something that was less good, but ticked other boxes.
Yeah, that's
Well, that's actually kind of similar because I was specifically looking for. I can't remember what I put inside. I think I ended up without a heroes bit. I think I put something else in there instead. But there were various reasons that I wanted that, both for the theme and for the characters, and for trying not to have an endless stream of white men named Chris. So I agree. That is another issue with regard to doing vid shows. Is that do you go for the best videos or do you go for videos that express a wide variety of arguments?
Yeah.
Or do you go for the ones? I mean, I suppose best is subjective. But anyway, do you mean technically the best, or do you mean imaginatively, or do you mean?
This is the thing. I always think that the best vid for your show is the one that kind of advances the argument you're making or that tells the story you want to tell. So I think like objective quality, whatever that is not necessarily always the most important thing when you're choosing a vid for a vid show.
Also, there are quite a few people who have blanket permission up for this kind of thing, so I found there have been vidders who I've emailed to say, hey, can I use your vid? And they've gone, well, I've got blanket permission, why are you asking? So,
I mean, it's still nice, it's still polite to ask, but blanket permission actually is really helpful, yeah. So if someone's got blanket permission and you're in a rush, then maybe you don't have to ask them. But, yeah.
There are some I find where I worry much more than others. I mean, the easy one is best of CreaSpace because Turbo picks all the vids and says, here you are.
That's brilliant, yeah.
But when I was working with Marsha and we did the show on abusive relationships, I didn't show a vid unless I had permission from the bidder.
That makes sense.
And I explained what the show was first because I'm aware peripherally that there are certain tensions within the Buffy fandom about whether Spike and Buffy are good or not.
Yeah.
And when you're picking vids
Understatement.
as examples of exploring abusive relationships, I wouldn't want somebody to find it on the website and be really hurt and come and kill me.
Yeah.
What are people's feelings on super long vids versus going for shorter vids?
It's really individual.
yeah.
How interesting is the super long vid?
That's the thing, if it's a super long vid and you feel like you really need it in your show, I would put it in, but I would never have more than one or two in one show. Like, that would be a deciding factor for me kind of cutting down my list. I wouldn't have more than one or two like that. Also, yeah, if you have short vids, then you can just cram loads of them.
But then you do get some long vids where, I think the CreaSpace one a year or two ago, where Catherine Depp had done the Robin Williams one that was 8 or 9 minutes long and in 4 movements.
Yeah.
And I think in the same show we had the 14, 15 minute, the bar where all the movie characters go. And those were both in the same show.
Yeah, those are both really good vids, actually.
So I'm not a Jewish person, but
If you could be.
well, thinking about Katrine Depp again, when the series with Doctor Who with 12 and Clara, she seemed to do a vid every few episodes that seemed to actually follow the story of the series itself.
Yeah.
Would you get away with putting that in the vid show? With that too Doctor Who specific?
I think it would really depend on what vid show you were doing and what exactly you were trying to achieve with it. Like, I don't want to be prescriptive and say, like, you couldn't do this in a vid show. I think if you really want to do something in a vid show and you feel like you have a good reason, then you can do it in a vid show. I mean, like, I'm not the king of vid shows, but but I honestly think, I mean, like the sort of, like, super terrible, worst vid show in the world idea that you just had over here, I honestly think if there's anything... You can say, oh, you could never make a vid show about X, and then somebody will prove you wrong. So, I think if you thought you had a way to make it work, then you would probably make it work.
And the vid description field is your friend. One of the things I wrangled around, and I'd be interested in what other people think. I think there's a difference between, if you're doing a squee vid, a lot of squee vids are immediate and obvious.
Yeah.
But I worry a lot with, for example, with Black Squirrel when we were doing the shippers vids, and we worried about putting in vids that were very meta-heavy for that fandom,
Yeah.
and whether or not there would be the general appeal.
That makes
And
sense.
we sort of compromised by not having too many and trying to use the descriptions field as best we can.
Yeah.
Whereas I think this year I'd quite like to do one that's just, yay, bunnies!
That would be great.
Yeah, I think there's something about being aware of the audience, and a good vid is not always a good vid. It
Yeah.
depends on where you show it, and in what context and what comes before and after. So I
Absolutely,
think
yeah.
sometimes, if a vid is really, really great, but it heavily depends on knowing the show or knowing other things about the video, it can actually lose.
Yeah.
And also, I find that good meta vids, quite often, what you would normally do is you watch them 2, 3, 4 times, and you do some kind of
Yeah.
thinking and percolating, and then you get back to it. And a vid show has this very staccato rhythm where
Yeah.
you have 3 seconds between vids, and actually it can be kind of uncomfortable if you have a really good but kind of heavy or thought-provoking vid, and you just have to focus on something else.
Yeah.
You don't get a couple of minutes to think it through. So, yeah, some vids that are actually great might not work well in a vid show,
That makes sense.
and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Anybody else?
I was surprised at how much like making a mixtape, putting together a Vidshow was. And I had thought, gosh, this will be fun. I get to look at a lot of things that I like. But then my ears ended up being as important.
Yeah.
And picking music that was going to work. Again, with the Vampires one, there were so many Marilyn Manson songs. And so it became a fun challenge to find, is there like a sweet love song or a pop song, or can we do something against the genre or with the genre, and how many times will I lean into the metal side of things?
I really felt the same thing when Ed and I did the video games show, that the field of vids that we started with all were the same musical genre, really, with a lot of vids from YouTube vidders. But then in the end, when we consciously worked with that, we ended up with a vid show where I think there were more slow songs and more quiet songs in the end. So.
It was also quite good fun with that one, where we ended up sort of dividing up the areas we were hunting through.
Yeah.
So Chris was going through the Life Gen of the Dreamwidth fandoms in particular, and I sort of took YouTube and CreaSpace. And one of the things that was handy with CreaSpace was looking at vids that have been uprated and downrated,
Yeah.
because there is a certain sort of ethos and look like any community there. And finding things that they downrated sometimes meant finding something really interesting that just didn't fit.
That is really interesting. I'm going to use that trick in the future.
It's also why, in some ways, I like CreaSpace show, and I think we get reasonably good representation from them. But I would really love to see somebody doing vid shows using stuff from animemusicvidders.org.
Yeah.
Because we're forever saying, oh, we should have more anime vids, but nobody's really taken the plunge.
I think as a site it's quite difficult to navigate if you don't know it already. Like I've used a couple of vids from it, and it's quite difficult, and it's difficult to know how to get in contact with the people on it and that kind of thing sometimes. But there's a lot of good stuff there.
I am frantically taking notes, guys, for next year.
You're just saying it's quite interesting. It sounds like making a vid show is actually quite a lot like making a vid.
Yeah, actually.
It kind of sounds like you're worrying about the length of the vid, or in the video, you're worrying about the length of the clips. And does this say what you're trying to say? Is it okay? Was it breaking your momentum? Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And does it say what you're trying to make it say? And does it break what point? So it's actually quite.
It's cool, yeah. As somebody who does both, I definitely feel like it engages like the same part of my brain. I don't know about anybody else. But yeah.
Definitely less fiddly to make a vid show.
Yes.
One question that I have for people who have marshalled things like premieres together. I found trying to wrangle Vidder's Choice and Best of CreaSpace into playing orders can be quite good fun, because you don't really get a choice of what's in there. you know, sometimes it's happy, angst, sharks. And I'd be interested to hear how other people do it, because what I've typically ended up doing is I basically sort of divide the vids up by feel until I can get a couple of separate movements, and then I go through and I start playing to see what feels like it's flowing together. But I'm interested to hear if there are other ways of doing it.
I mean, yeah, I usually try and kind of make it so that if you've got kind of two emotional extremes, it flows from one to the other. Actually, I kind of semi-put together this year's Festivids show because it was based on what people had voted for, but then I put it in order. And there was one vid that definitely had, I mean, you'll see in the programme, there was one vid that absolutely had to be in the show, and I couldn't work out whether to put it at the beginning or the end because it's a very emotional vid. And then having chatted with some people in this room about it, we decided to put it at the beginning because it would be a super downer to end on. But that was a real challenge of putting stuff in order, and I do think that like trying to get a flow is sort of one of the hardest bits of making a Vidshow. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
But I think if you have that scenario where you have limited control over, you know, the show, the vids in the show, because you've got premieres or you know because it's been submitted. In my experience, quite often you end up with at least one vid that just doesn't fit anywhere, and you just kind of, you know, it's like damage control, and you have to, you know, either you bury it in the middle and hope that it's kind of a natural slump, and it just. Again, it's not about that vid. It's just, you know, if you have lots of anime happy screen vids and then one really heavy, it's just, it's not, you know.
Yeah, sometimes
So
there is
you
no way
just-
to
yeah.
make it work.
You kind of have to hide it away a bit.
I have found an intermission can help. I have found an intermission can help.
All that, yeah.
That makes sense, but I guess then you have to have a long enough show to need an intermission.
Fitter's choice is also. But I know one of the things that I always tend to do with them, because it's something I read about horror movies, is I tend to put the ones that are emotionally or narratively harder at the start, so that people get invested and they put the work in. And then where you have the sort of happier or more upbeat emotional stuff afterwards, people actually react more strongly to it. And come to the horror show.
Yeah,
The carrot and the stick.
I agree with what you were saying, because there was at least one big show that Cliff and I ran one year, and we did it the other way around, and we ended with the really like emotionally heavy stuff, and everyone kind of finished the show kind of like, oh. And having done that, I've got kind of from there on out, I've always done it completely the other way around, because I kind of like to leave people happy.
I still don't see how we could have made that argument the other way around.
No, I know.
Okay,
I
like that
thought it was
specific,
necessary for that one,
it was
but-
unpopular characters kind of thing. So we kind of started off like, here's some people don't tend to like, and then we kind of wandered through to, and this is why we think that might be, and it sort of got a bit heavy, but I don't know how to have done that differently, but it was definitely a bit like, I'm not sure about this.
And again, I think, you know, if that's really the argument you want to make, it's okay to go, because, you know, rules are there to be broken. If we all stick to all the, you know, kind of golden rules, it would be quite boring. So sometimes you just have to go against the grain, and that's actually part of the excitement or energy from the show, because it's going against my expectations. I'm thinking this is where we're going, and actually no, it's going the other way. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, well, if we've kind of run out of steam on this bit, how about best vid shows that you've seen, or vid shows that you thought worked really well for whatever reason, and why? Yeah.
I really liked the one about religious ones. I think it's called Science and Silence.
That was great, yeah.
I still remember it, and I think it was a combination of a really interesting idea, but also it had a couple of just absolutely stand out, really complicated, interesting videos for characters that I didn't think, you know, like it really introduced me to a lot of videos at the same time. And you know, that's kind of like, you know, you've got to have the idea, and sometimes the videos just aren't out there. You know, it's difficult to make a video about, or to find videos about not main characters, or not the most popular characters, or not ships. But it was just, I really like that one. I really like videos which have a slightly more specific but interesting theme, I think. Because if they work, then they work really, really well.
I remember one from, I think, 2011, about artificial humans, artificial people. people.
That one was really cool. Yeah.
And it was very clever to see all the different interpretations of what an artificial person was. And because it was timed up with the panel afterwards, it then led to a really good discussion.
Yeah.
It was nice.
I do think if you've got one of those kind of bigger questions to discuss in your vid show, it can be quite cool to have a panel that ties in, because I always find when I come out of a vid show, I really want to discuss it anyway. So it's nice to kind of have a con space to do that in sometimes.
I loved the same song, different swords.
Oh, that was great, yeah. I think that, again, was one of the ones that was sort of an interesting departure from what you would normally expect a vid show to be. And it was really interesting because it was kind of part a vid show and part a sort of, I don't know, it was a really interesting, like, intellectual exercise to watch the two vids one after the other and already be thinking about comparing and contrasting them while you're sat there in the vid show. It was pretty cool.
It was also a great show to sort of move on to realize how we as a bidding interested community have moved on from where we might have been a few years ago.
Yeah.
Where one vid owned one song, and to vid the same song to a different source was like, oh, how dare you? Leave the con immediately, turn your badge.
But also that's interesting, because I mean, it just made me think that now, I mean, even with YouTube and stuff, you get the same source to the same song. It kind of doesn't seem like such a big deal.
Yeah. So it was lovely to recognize just how maybe relaxed that rule had become.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see why it made sense earlier, because yeah, often you were encountering the same few people making vids, and they would be in the same space as often. But now, yeah, when there's so many people on YouTube, like literally there are about 12 Star Trek Voyager vids set to Starlight by Muse, and I love all of them. And I'm going to make another one.
I had somebody shout at me on YouTube because you know the Lois and Clark Smallville vid I showed him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody shouted at me because that's not a Lois and Clark song. That's a Lana and Clark song.
How dare you?
I had a Steven Universe vid on YouTube that got some ridiculous number of hits, just because I think it was linked by somewhere, I don't know. But I had a full-blown, massive flame war about all the people telling me I should not have used it because it's a song for Homestuck. We're talking like 20, 30 comments of people just having a giant war and insulting each other and really bad language. I had to go and start muting comments and banning people. It was scary.
Yeah, me too.
Not really to do with VJ, but
interesting though.
I really liked the last year's political one with Black Lives Matter and the other thing. I liked how it kind of deviated a bit from traditional fandoms into other ways that the fan vid styles are being used and sort of decimating stuff. So
Yeah.
that was quite cool.
Oh, thank you. That was my show. I actually have always been interested when there's been stuff at the con that has been about vids that are less kind of traditional vids, whatever that means. Like, I feel like many of us come from kind of a bidding tradition that has a certain idea of what a basic vid looks like, and it's always really interesting to see variations on that and stuff that's kind of vid-like but not exactly a vid, or things that come from kind of other places on the internet that we maybe don't know so well. I mean, I remember last year in Vidder's Choice we had that one that was a video game vid that was really cool with the flying through space and the stuff. Yeah, I can't remember very much about it, but I remember that I was really interested. And like some of us were chatting the other day actually about the way that news programs now quite often make their own little vids about political things. And like, did anybody else see Newsnight? Yeah, that vidded the election to hurt. It's like black and white footage of Theresa May looking sad. I could find this on YouTube. Literally, this is a vid. I think it's always really interesting, especially if you're making a vid show that's quite broad ranging. It is cool if you can bring in some stuff that's like maybe a little bit further from our normal vid watching experience. I think that's quite cool.
Doctor Who Confidential went around. Was very good at making Doctor Who vids every week. That's it.
Yeah.
I always liked the Eurovision because there are so many sources in there, so many videos that I wouldn't otherwise see,
Yeah.
because life is always fun.
Yeah, I feel like the Eurovision show is always one of those ones that you watch it and you come out going like, whoa, oh my gosh, I have to watch this and I have to watch that and that was really cool. And
But I think that's also a bit of the challenge, that you know that actually a lot of the bits are going to be a source that is not at all recognised, or even the, you know, not even the actors or the setting. You know, it all kind of looks strange, and I think that can be quite hard if you have lots of them.
I always really like the intros in Eurovision as well, where everybody does their little videos. They're always really fun. Yeah, it's nice to have. What haven't we covered? Yeah, other VJs. Did I say anything that you thought was super terrible, bad, and wrong?
I don't know what FTP means.
Oh, I mean, file transfer protocol. Thanks everybody.
Do you know what it does?
You said you needed to have more words.
Yeah, it's like a program that lets you upload a file directly to a website or to someone else without having to like use an interface and things. So you start like a program, you open an FTP program, and you say send this file to that person.
Do I download the FTP program?
Yes, you download an FTP program, you open it, you type in the address you want to send the file, and you put your username and password if you need one. You don't always. And you basically, it looks a lot like a file browser usually, like you have your stuff on one side and then the website on the other side, you just send it over.
I was thinking actually I might, when I was originally going to do this panel, I was going to be really prepared and smart and do, while I was uploading the Festivids show, I was going to take screen caps of everything so that I could put them in the slideshow, and then I forgot to do that. So I think for next year, in time for sort of the run-up to next year's con, I might do something similar and kind of put some stuff on the internet with some more detailed sort of guides to how things work and stuff. So if anybody does want to make a Vidshow but they are a bit intimidated by the technical side, I might put some instructions and that kind of thing up.
I would also say that a perfectly valid FTP method is to shout at me on Twitter or by email and say it's on this Mediafire website, can you upload it for me please?
See, everybody's so helpful.
I guess I could put instructions on the website, maybe.
I mean, like, we all seem to manage every year. It's really, like, I think a lot of the technical side of making a vid show is stuff that seems a lot scarier than it is until you actually do it once, and then once you've done it once, you're like, oh, actually, that was really easy. So, yeah, do not be scared.
I mean, it's definitely no more complicated than kind of navigating the internet, which
we've all just about got
I mean, I feel like everybody was reasonably internet savvy, right? I have a question actually. Like, I find that my biggest thing with making vid shows is I'm quite lazy and I like the vids I like. So I often have difficulty kind of breaking out of vids I already know to find new ones, which I definitely think is a flaw in my kind of vid show making. But like, what do people do about like vids that they've like seen a vid, like how do people deal with that kind of thing? Vids that they know have appeared in the con like last year or the year before. Do you factor that in when you make a vid show?
Yes.
I mean, I was wondering for a little bit more.
If there is a vid that I would like to include in the show, I usually check if it's appeared before, and if it has, I try to not include it. But sometimes I find that this vid is so crucial to the argument I want to make, or the mood I want to build, or whatever, that I really, really want it, and then I just don't care.
Yeah.
And I try to avoid it.
Because that's what I do. If it's like 3 or 4 years ago, again, it has less weight than if it was 1 or 2 years ago.
What I found hard, I did my first vid show this year, so I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know what that's going to be like.
Awesome.
What I found hard was kind of the competing things. Like for every vid, there was like, well, okay, this one has appeared before in the con, but it's one of my few vids that isn't a white person, you know, and or this one fits better with the theme, but it's you know all these different competing things like every vid, and which one
weighed more than anything else.
Mm.
You know? And then you end up feeling, why can't the vid show be 2 hours long?
See, that's what this really needed. It's a little equation to show you how to properly weight all of the
Challenge accepted.
It's also in fairness, you know that if they said fine, every video could be 2 hours long, it would come out. But now we want 3 hours.
Actually, yeah, I'm interested to know how people deal with it when there are just too many amazing vids for your vid show, and literally all of them would be incredible. Like, how do you then make that decision when literally you could make it 2 hours and it would be the most amazing vid show of all time? Like, I know that that's a situation that some of us have encountered.
Make a rule.
That makes sense.
Make a hard and fast rule and try not to let any outliers in, just as a way to cull some of them.
Yeah.
This vid is too much about, like, this vid has this topic in it, but it's actually about something else, even though I love it. Okay, it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like, I often find coming back to it, the Derby vids, it's like, well, I really love this one, but it isn't actually necessary, and that's a really difficult distinction to make.
I always think it doesn't actually help with making the vid show itself, but it usually makes me feel a bit better if I kind of keep my long list and sort of think, well, you nearly made it, guys, and then sometimes like watch those ones. Maybe put like a list online of the ones that you thought were not quite there, but sort of do like a longer playlist of it online and post that and be like, this is what it would have been if it had been an hour and a half.
Director's cut.
Yeah.
But can I just ask you, how do you manage that with asking permission? Because I found that a bit tricky. If, sometimes I try to be really organized, and because people, depending where you contact them, if you message them on YouTube, it takes months for them to find
You keep the ones that you had to cull as backup, so you can put them back in if someone says no.
You can always ask somebody at the last minute kind of thing.
Yeah, but what do you do if people say yes and then you call the vid?
I don't ask.
Because I find that really
make
hard
a final.
to say, well, yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much, but by now your vid is kind of obsolete, and
I don't
need it
ask until
anymore.
I know. I waited until I had a final lineup, and then I asked everyone. And then one person came back and said no, so I replaced it, and I asked that one person for the replacement. So I don't bother asking until I'm pretty sure it's going to be.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, with people where I feel I have a relationship with them, that I know them or are acquainted with them, I might ask in advance and say, I might put this in this vid show, because I feel like I know that they will be hurt if it doesn't fit.
I think like a lot of the time, if it's somebody who's at the con and that you can just text them and be like, I'm using your vid, loser, and it'll be fine.
But then again, if you are organised and you do send out messages beforehand, and then somebody's vid does get cut, I think it's not too unreasonable to send a message. Say they've replied finally and said, yes, you can definitely use it, I'm so shocked. You'll be like, I'm really sorry due to type mistakes. You don't have to say, your vid was actually crap, so I cut it.
I mean, I guess the way you could,
I can't.
Maybe you could get around that by sending people a message and saying, I'm planning to use your vid, it's wonderful and great, please let me know by such and such a date if you don't want me to use it, and then you kind of...
Or putting it together.
Yeah.
It's not just a kind of...
I have found that if I tell people why I'm using their vid, what it is that I like about them, if I then have to cut it out, they're generally happier about it because I think they like the fact that somebody actually liked it enough and told them why.
That makes sense, yeah.
On the other hand, that's a hell of a lot of long comments.
Anybody, any other thoughts?
I often trim down my vid list by looking at the longest vids and saying, is there something shorter that does the same sort of thing?
That makes sense.
Or if I take this one out, can I put 2 shorter ones in its place? I also then tend to ask Becca, who says, shorter, everything should be shorter.
I have no attention span.
Then I make her watch 9 minutes of Meatloaf.
Is that how long the Meatloaf song is that we're making the video
No,
tomorrow?
it's only 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
That's fine.
It's a
then.
Meatloaf song?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was busy at the time. I was negligent, it got through.
Some of us are really excited about the Meatloaf song.
Some of us have been paying all the attention.
If it helps, it's the Meatloaf song that I was looking at bidding, all about Finn and Poe's unrequited love for each other.
Yay! This is better and better.
some evil looks from our side.
Okay, I don't think we've really completely touched on what things have learned since they made what people have learned since they made the first Vidshow. Like, does anybody have any kind of sort of comments on the learning curve and kind of how, like, for people who've made quite a few Vidshows, do you feel more confident now? Do you feel like it's still as terrifying as the first time?
It definitely gets easier. And if you're really frightened the first time, you can always team up with someone, and then it's less scary because there's two of you.
Share the blame.
Yeah.
I have to say, I really, really find it a lot easier if I'm either VJing with someone or there is someone around that I can at least bounce ideas off. And
Yeah. It is quite scary, I think, to be doing it by yourself, because then even if you think, wow, this is amazing, then there is that voice in your head that's like, but what if it's secretly terrible? And then at least if there's two of you, then it's like, you know, two of you might be wrong, but it's less likely.
One friend.
I have to say I'm sort of doubly paranoid about it because VidCon is generally a wonderful, happy, squeeful place. And the sort of vidshows I end up working on with other people are things like dystopian futures and abusive relationships and horror vids and queer space. And
But like, I think that's kind of, in a way, that's pretty essential to the con, really, because if you had a bunch of vidshows that were all the exact same feel, then it wouldn't work so well. It's nice to be able to have like a combination of different types of things, because otherwise it would feel like you were just watching one long big vidshow, which would be fun in its way, but a different kind of con, I think.
But it always does raise that slightly increased risk that everybody's going to go, you're a monster.
I mean, I think there's something about immediate gratification. I guess, you know, if you do festivids or a kind of, you know, straightforward squeeze show, there's lots of giggle in the room and people afterwards are kind of really excited and up. And if it's a really good vid show on a darker theme, then the mood, even so people really like it and enjoy it, they can't, you know, there's not going to be lots of laughter and giggling throughout.
I'm very concerned.
Well, they might be giggling from some people. And by the end, you know, the mood is somber. And then in terms of feedback or gratification, if you're feeling a bit unsure about how, you know, that's much harder to take.
Yeah.
So I guess there's something for the vid watchers in there as well in terms of, you know, how do we feedback appreciation and, you know, that something was really good if it wasn't maybe immediately obvious that I really enjoyed it because it was kind of...
Although I guess if you do a really kind of dark, deep vid show and everybody at the end is just like, then like that's your desired effect, really.
Yes, but
But no, I know what you mean.
Discrimination between, oh, that was awesome, but I'm really depressed, and this was horrible, what did the guy... You know,
it's harder to tell the difference between those two than it is between like,
much
yay
narrower,
and
So...
Do you remember a show that we possibly shouldn't name in the streaming that you and I worked on where we were concerned about certain levels of rampant misogynistic hate in some of the videos?
Yes, I do remember that.
And yet, I remember after the show, the one that you and I were most worried about is the one that everybody seemed to want to talk about.
Yeah.
I do think
That
that
was
it was a really good.
amazing.
Yeah, I do think it was a really good decision that we made, that you guys made, to stand up ahead of time and say, look, guys, here's fair warning about what you're going to watch, because then everyone was on the same page about the context in which we were watching it and the reasons why it was at the con. Which meant, I think, that it was much safer to look at it as something interesting and to look at the technical excellence of the bidding and stuff. I think that was a really good decision the way you decided to do that.
I think that actually sort of touches on something that I think is quite important that we haven't really mentioned yet, which is descriptions for your show itself and the descriptions of the vids, which I think we did touch on a little bit. I think especially if your vid show is something that's quite sort of challenging or complex, then the words that you put in the con book to explain what your show is about can go a long way to getting people into the right headspace, I think, and sort of helping people decide whether, oh, this is a vid show that I can handle, or like maybe this is too scary for me, I might go for a walk, that kind of thing. So I didn't actually put that in my slideshow, which I should have done. Damn. But yeah, I think that can make a difference to how your show goes down, like what you actually use to describe it. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has found that.
I think likewise, if you're unsure about showing something, you don't necessarily have to click it. You can just sort of make sure you describe what people are going to going to see going in, and then give people the chance to get those in.
Definitely, yeah.
I had from a slightly different angle, in terms of when you're trying to come up with ideas for a vid show, how useful are the posts on VidUcon, Dreamwidth, or LJ? Do you guys use them? Could they be slightly different? Like, are they a good place to kind of bounce ideas off people?
That is a good question, actually. What do other people think?
Some years I found yes. Other years I found nobody comments, or it's the same one or two people.
I do wonder if it kind of depends on timing and who happens to be around, because it does seem like there's often kind of an initial flurry, and then if people kind of, like, I wonder if people are worried to go after that initial flurry and kind of comment after it seems like everybody else has moved on. But
I found Twitter quite handy once I knew the horror show was in.
Yeah.
Because when I actually said, okay, I'm going to do this, I had people like Kiki Mizuichi and Jetpack Monkey stepping up to offer stuff.
I find Twitter more useful than Dreamwidth now, just because more people are there.
I have to say, so many bidding people seem to be on Twitter now, like much more so than a couple of years ago, or maybe I've just started following everybody in the last couple of years. But Twitter seems to be quite a good place to talk to other bidders at the moment. I think we're about out of time. Does anybody else have anything that they have like a burning desire to express to the room?
I do have one general question.
Yeah.
For the people who put vid shows together, how do you feel about the vidder putting up warnings on their vid compared to the VJ putting up warnings on the vids in the show? Because things like with CreaSpace, I go through and I do the warnings on all of them.
Yeah.
Whereas
I guess because they don't have that kind of warning culture.
Yeah, I mean, quite often even when I speak to the bidders, some we don't share a language, others never reply.
Yeah.
Others go, well, surely you enjoy this. But I notice it with some of the shows. There are some shows where it will just be every single vid will say the bidder chose not to give any warnings.
Yeah. I tend to go with whatever the bidder said in their vid post. So if they've originally chosen to not give any warnings, usually I will leave that on unless I watch it and I think, actually no, there's a specific reason why this should definitely have a warning. But generally I just go with whatever the bidders said.
I mostly do the opposite. I do all the warnings myself now, because I find that the bidders have such different concepts of what needs a warning.
Yeah.
So, for example, I did the A-Ships vid show.
Oh yeah.
And there was one vid that had warnings from the bidder, the vid by Things with Wings, and that was maybe the mildest vid of all of them. And so, to get a more even.
I think one easy thing where I would certainly support the VJ making the decision over the bidder is just physical triggers as well, because that's
That
something
makes
that's
sense.
actually objectively able to be determined. So that's an easier one.
And also, as a bidder, I feel more comfortable with the VJ to put warnings on, because I cannot judge myself whether things need warnings or not. If we go to the cinema and somebody asks me if they can take a child to the film, I'll probably say yes, and then I'll do it. So,
I mean, I think that's the issue, is that how do you make that determination? I think that's one of the reasons why the warnings question is such a huge issue in the community just in general, is because there is no way of knowing what that standard is.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that culturally, here at VidUcon, I think we've used content warnings, certainly from, I think, 2011, I don't know if they were in 2008, but I remember when we started using them, I think the VidCon community were quite aggressively against them, because putting warnings on removed the artistic integrity of the vid or something.
I have to say, I like the way we have it here, where you can kind of flip to the back of the program and look at the list of warnings there, and it's kind of less intrusive. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't find warnings helpful and actually would rather not have the potential spoiler, then you don't even have to look at that page of the program.
So would it be like an interesting kind of thing to have it so that it was possible to provide good warnings and show warnings? Is there enough of a disparity, like disparities or not,
Interesting.
enough of a difference between them? Like a show can be put together in the same way a vid can, to give a very different context to what's being actually there. So you could have.
That's a really interesting question, actually. Yeah.
I've got to say, having done 3/4 of the dark vid shows here, I think I tend to always stand up before the vid show and gabble nervously about it.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, anybody, anything else? We chatted out? Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. That was a panel. Now I can take myself off the internet, do I? I assume I just press this button that says stop streaming.
Yeah, that would be favourite, I think.
Yay.
So, time for food if you need.